Yo, Thought Warriors. What is up? Higher Learning is on. It's Ivan Lathan Jr.
And it's me, Rachel and Lindsay.
Interesting show today, Rachel.
It's a lot going on.
A lot of stuff happening. Lot of stuff happening. There are only two topics in the show today. One is one Sean Diddy Combs, who was convicted on 2 of 5 counts. But if you're being honest about it, it seems like he's skated.
Oh, I mean, I think he would say that. He fell to his knees crying when the verdict was read. These were the lowest charges. He was not guilty on the highest charges.
A win
the ones
for
with the
Diddy.
most consequences. Mm-hmm.
A win for Diddy. So let's just get into it right now. So Diddy was facing 5 counts, or 5 different. Help me out legally. He
5 counts.
was facing 5 counts: sex trafficking of Cassie, sex trafficking of the Jane Doe, and then a RICO.
Mm-hmm.
He was found not guilty on all 3 of those charges. Those charges had by far the most serious penalties, and even more so than the most serious penalties. Those charges also had the most serious cultural ramifications for Diddy. It wasn't just that those charges carried the most serious penalties in court or in the legal system. Being convicted of a RICO, being a sex trafficker, that matters in a different way to people than transportation for the purposes of prostitution.
100%.
Would have been different. Those 2 charges, that violations of the Mann Act, he has been found guilty of. He is awaiting sentencing. He was denied bail. And now each charge there carries, I think, a maximum of 10 years.
That's correct.
Which means there's a possibility that Diddy could get 20 years in prison, which would make him 75 when he got out. But that is not going to happen. He is not going to get 10 years on each charge. Rachel, what do you think will happen?
No, they will probably, well, one, there are federal sentencing guidelines. I don't know what they are particularly to these charges, but there are federal sentencing guidelines that federal judges follow. And they do not equate to 20 years for especially the first time that somebody's being charged with this. I would estimate that he's probably, let's just say if the federal sentencing guideline is 5 years, I think the judge would give him 5 years. And the reason I say that is because when you listen to people talk about this case, it's 10 years and 10 years for each charge, max. Those are going to run they're going to put those together. They're going to put them together. So it's 10 years. That's the first thing I would think. And then I would say that it was probably half that time. So it's probably 5 years. And obviously this is up to the judge's discretion, but seeing how the judge has handled Diddy's request or the defense's request for bail, and particularly this last time to be released, particularly after the jury found him not guilty on the lesser charges, and he still denied him getting released. I think this judge, who has more information than we have because he presided over this case, is factoring in letters from the victims, letters from the attorneys on both sides, all the evidence that he heard in the case. He has said he feels like he is a danger to society, and he's locked him up until October 3rd for the sentencing. I think he'll give him 5 years. The defense thinks that it's going to be 2 years. And his time served, his time served, by the time October hits, time served is a little over a year. So if the defense is right, he'll get like a couple of months. I mean, not a couple of months, like several months.
He'll probably get 2 years total because, look, this is just, I'm regurgitating what I hear from other people.
We're guessing. Yeah.
So
all this is opinion.
He's going to get credit for time served.
Mm-hmm.
So you're gonna get some credit for time served. Then, it's Fed time, so he could do like a drug or alcohol program and then get some time for that. If he gets into that, you'd think that he would want to get into that. If he can get into that, he can get that. It's going to be something like 30 months. But look, here's the main deal here. What does this mean? This has been such a whiplash.
Since the verdict has come out.
Well, no, even before then, right?
Okay.
As the government's case started to fall apart, and it did. As the government's case started to fall apart, you started to see a reaction from people that they were pre-habilitating Diddy, not rehabilitating. They were pre-habilitating Diddy. Different people who have it in their hearts to be on the side of Diddy.
Let me ask you something, Van.
Sure.
You say the prosecution's case fell apart.
Yeah.
Are you saying that because of the verdict that came out or because of what you witnessed during this trial? Because I'm going to argue that their case did not fall apart.
Give it to me.
This is the fucking jury. And of course, everything that we're saying, we have not heard a juror speak. We don't know anything, but this is my opinion. I truly believe, and we're going to bring Yodit on to talk about this, but I truly believe that they laid out Rico. I'll give you that. I'll give you Rico. Fine. Rico, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm talking specifically about sex trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like between the evidence, which of course I didn't see every single thing that was presented, and the testimony that was given, I believe that over weeks, the prosecution fully laid out their case for sex trafficking. And the jury chose not to believe the testimony of those women. There was nothing more that the prosecution could do to prove the elements of that case. That jury of 8 men and 4 women listened, watched the testimony of those women and said, I don't think you were forced. I don't think you were coerced. I don't think you were threatened. That's what they said. And I think the prosecution did a fantastic job of laying that out. There was nothing more that they could show.
Okay. So I'll tell you this. I'm not going to argue with the legal eagle, but nobody agrees with you.
That's not true. I listened to people talk about this today.
But
lawyers.
What I'm like, even the most conservative people are saying that there were mistakes made by the prosecution, even
like
the way they got. Okay. So, for example,
and we'll bring Yodit on to talk about it because she's the true legal eagle.
like, for example, there was the testimony of the women, right, that were on the stand. And then there was the words that the women had typed out to Diddy and talked to Diddy about and all of that stuff.
This is the problem.
Go for it.
This is a problem. This is why this infuriates me. Okay. So this really makes me mad because to your point, the jury could not separate what the women were saying versus what a text message that said, I love you, or a text message that said, you're my best friend. And this is where I think
text message that said, I want to do a freak off.
There is a deep misunderstanding of what consent is, and then taking it back, and then coercion. So in the closing arguments, Diddy's attorney said that Cassie Ventura was the winner in this case. And he's making that statement because she walked away with a $30 million settlement. That statement alone infuriates me. And it makes me so upset because to say that Cassie is the winner minimizes and ignores everything that this woman endured. And that kind of statement, the jury obviously believed that, which is why they found him not guilty when it came to sex trafficking. That statement erases her testimony of years of physical abuse, psychological abuse, and fear. And when he made that statement in his closing arguments, he opened the door and planted a seed for this jury of 8 men and 4 women to discredit her testimony and to correlate it that it wasn't that she suffered any type of coercion or that she felt threatened or that she felt or there was any type of force. They correlated it more to this was something that she desired, whether it was for fame, whether it was for money, or whether it was some type of association to the power and the person that Diddy is. And as these charges came out, or I'm sorry, the verdict came out, I kept thinking about that conversation that we had about the Me Too movement and whether the Me Too movement had any kind of impact. And when you asked me about it, I was like, no, I think that it did, because I was like, oh, it gave a voice to women who have been abused and they felt more empowered. And then they took down people and brought out truths of big people like a Harvey Weinstein or a Diddy, who were known perpetrators within the community. But when somebody like a Cassie or other women who are public figures come out, it allows other women to speak out about how they suffered at the hands of these monsters as well. But when I listen to a jury deny the rights, I feel like of these women who testified, I feel like it makes me feel like maybe the Me Too movement, to your point, didn't have the impact that I did, because the whole part of it was to bring awareness and to combat sexual violence that women endured. And for a Diddy to get off on some of these major charges, and I'll take RICO out of it, but sex trafficking, it means that once again, you did not believe these women. It means that you think that they wanted the things that they testified to. They wanted the abuse. They wanted this humiliation. And it lets me know, again, that they don't understand consent or that consent changes. They don't understand that these women were subordinates and these women felt pressure to do the things that they were doing, whether it was fear of their life, fear of their career, or even fear of their reputation. And they ignored all of that. And I honestly believe this because they could not get past their subconscious bias and judgment. I am telling you, I am having conversations with friends in person and through group chats, men and women, where I am shocked at the things that they are saying, like, how could these women go back? How could these women, she really did love him. This was love. If I was in this situation, that would never be me. That's not the way that you should be looking at this. And if you say those things to me, that is you judging Cassie, judging the Jane Doe, and that's your subconscious bias coming out. I feel that like I said, that the prosecution did a really good job of laying out the elements when it comes to sex trafficking. And I believe that the testimony of these women further corroborated it, but a jury decided otherwise. And they looked at these victims and they said they subjected themselves to this. And I feel like we're once again looking at a system that does not honor the truth and the stories of women. And you see people like a Diddy who are powerful men that get away with the abuse of women. And at the end of the day, they're going to be praised and even celebrated for it, which is what we saw happen outside of the courtroom. To me, I just can't see it any other way. And I know people are going to disagree with me, but when I heard you say that you're listening to experts talk and they're bringing up the text messages, I don't think that that's the prosecution mishandling the case. I think that that is a misunderstanding of society, not understanding that the pressure or threat or force or coercion that these women felt at the hands of a Diddy, and like that they had no other choice. I don't think people can see past it.
Okay. So,
and I'm sorry if that was redundant.
No, I think it was fantastic. So let's put all our cards on the table here. I think that Diddy is a sex trafficker. I don't know enough about RICO to know how that sort of reconciles itself.
Well, they didn't have any co-conspirators testify, and I think that that's probably what hurt them there.
I don't know about RICO in this case, but I do know about RICO in other cases. Like For example, if you look at a RICO charge against a John Gotti or a mob boss or somebody like that, then what you're looking at is someone who is in charge of a criminal enterprise and being in charge of that enterprise. People are doing stuff because they're either ordered to do it or in furtherance of that enterprise. When you have these testimonies or these RICO cases involving mob bosses, you have two things normally. Normally, you have direct testimony from somebody who was involved, like a Sammy the Bull, who says straight up, I killed this many people and John Gotti told me to do it, right? You have him. And if you believe him, because he's saying, and normally you do, because he's saying, I believed these people, or he's saying, I killed these people, shall I say, and you're believing that he killed these people, he's killed these people for John Gotti. But then also in those RICO cases, you have wiretaps.
Mm-hmm.
You have wiretaps of people acting in the way that the witnesses say that they act. You have wiretaps. You have somebody saying, hey, go take care of this. Hey, go take care of that. Hey, go take care of this. And then you can normally put these situations together and say, well, it's likely that Sammy the Bull or Henry Hill or whomever else is telling the truth because we see this person acting in this way. In this particular case, the reason why I say the prosecution, that it fell apart is because I think they got ambitious in the charging of the case and they probably overcharged the case. And then secondly, I think they overestimated or, to your point, underestimated how impactful the testimony would be. And the reason why I'm saying that is because if what you're saying is true, then there's no way that Diddy could ever be convicted of this stuff. That you'd have to have it on paper. That you'd have to have someone saying, hey, Diddy, I don't want to do this. Stop making me do this. Which
I think so.
I could argue and do argue that you do have. You have Cassie saying, hey, our freak offs are great when we both want it. You have people saying that the Jane Doe testifying that she thought that she was going for a nice hotel room sensual session with Diddy, and all of a sudden there's a guy there for a freak off and she doesn't want to do it. I think what fell apart was that the jury looked at what was happening between Diddy and these women as essentially a bad relationship.
Which is how the defense presented it, yeah.
Right. Which is like, hey, I like it this time. I don't like it that time. Or, for example, but just listen to what I'm saying.
Yeah,
listen to what I'm saying.
I'm listening.
Listen to what I'm saying. Like, if you were in a relationship with someone and throw a sexual thing out there, whatever. Like, you're in let's something tame so the audience doesn't go all crazy. Like, you don't like giving a blowjob. You're a woman. You don't like giving head. You don't like doing something like this. And you're doing it to make that person happy. You're doing it because that person is your everything. It's a difference between that and doing it because you think that person will kill you. Now, if you are saying that you are doing it because you think that that person will kill you, then it is going to be damaging, Rachel. I'm just being honest. It is going to be damaging.
Well, you know, it doesn't have to just be killed.
Killed, take away, whatever the reason why you think that you're doing it, right? Like whatever if you are doing it because you not because there's fear, it is going to be damaging if someone can produce communication from you at a certain point with you not expressing that. With you, hold on for a second.
Correct.
Hold on for a second. You and I are in the same boat as it relates to Diddy. I've already seen people that have completely crawfished and come back to this. And if I'm so disappointed by so many people I see that are ready to open their arms up and let Puff back into the culture. Puff is an abusive, manipulative, evil motherfucker. That's the end of it. That's a fact. I'm telling you guys this. That's a fact. There's no ambiguity there for me. However, if we're looking at this, if I'm being objective in looking at this,
sure,
I could see how people would have difficulty convicting somebody in this type of situation where they're saying that they felt one way, and then there's evidence or different evidence that they felt a different type of way.
You're right. I'm not going to disagree with you. I can totally see how that can confuse someone, right? And my question to Yodit when she comes on would be, did they present an expert to testify in regards to the psychological abuse, that a toll that this can take on someone, to talk about Stockholm syndrome, to talk about how victims do continue to go back to their abusers. That is an actual thing. And I would wonder if that type of evidence was presented. And even, this is where I'm putting my knowledge in. I wouldn't need somebody to say that to me for me to know that. But I guess if I'm taking evidence, for example, the video, right? The video of him beating Cassie in that hotel hallway is the most damaging, in my opinion, piece of evidence. And her testimony was that she was at a freak-off. She was in California. She did not want to be in there. She was running away, and he beat her down to drag her back in there to have sex. Now, how do you watch that and not say that that person wasn't forced to go in there and to commit acts that they didn't want to do? That person wasn't threatened. That person wasn't coerced to go back in there and do some shit that they didn't want to do. Now, help me reason that. That's the kind of stuff that I don't understand. Now, when you take all of it into consideration that she was 17 at best when she met Diddy, and this man dangled her entire career, reputation, life in front of her. I don't know how fucked up I would be at 17 if that was my life. And then I thought I was in love with this person and I had the world, and then it all changed. Yeah, that's like, think about what someone's mindset is at 17 and how easily they can be manipulated, and they don't understand what love is, and they get confused as to what love is. And to me, I think it just comes down to, like, if I'm just talking about the hotel incident alone, that is an entire act of somebody being forced to commit a sexual act that they didn't want to do. And for you to rule not guilty, and I'll just use Cassie because that's the video that we saw, that means you didn't believe that she was forced to do those things. That means you believe she wanted to do it. That means that that's what you believe. And the defense said that they were a great American love story. For you to rule not guilty, to give a not guilty verdict, you believe that. You believe that this was just domestic violence. You believed Cassie wanted this. But this is a jury who took an oath. And when you take an oath, or when you're questioned in voir dire, you are asked questions about your personal bias, right? And so this is why juries suck. This is why the defense would never have picked a trial by judge, right? Because what the hope is that they'll ask questions like, if this was, a murder case or something, they're going to ask you if you've had a family member who has been, let's say it was a murder case with a police officer who's been shot by the police, who's had run-ins with the police. Do you feel a certain way? Because they're trying to take your subconscious bias or not even subconscious bias, just your bias and judgment out of it. So the hope is that the questions that you're presenting are natural for us to have. The hope is that a jury can throw that out as a juror.
Who's asking the jury these questions, by the way?
The attorneys in voir dire. They're asking the question at the beginning.
So the attorneys, just the defense or the prosecution too?
Both do. And then they'll say like, I don't want 6 because of this. I don't want whatever. So the
prosecution picked the jury.
They both do. But like, it's a win-lose situation. The defense will get some people that they want. The jury, you're not going to all agree. You settle, right? Like, you're not like, those were exactly the 12 people that I wanted on that jury. But my point being is that you hope, because you ask these questions, that a jury doesn't come in with any bias, that they take exactly what's in front of them and they make a decision. So I'm saying that to say, to answer your questions of, you're right. Of course, naturally, you're like, well, then why would you keep going back? Why would you do this? The hope is that the jurors didn't do that. And they really took what was in front of them and they made a decision. My belief is that I believe the prosecution laid it out in a way where it was obvious to me that these women did not want to do that. The jury said otherwise. And my belief, and of course I don't know this, is that the jury said otherwise because they could not get past some of the questions that you're presenting. And I've come to that conclusion talking to people that I really respect, that I am shocked, who are saying things like, well, why did she go back? Well, if that was me, I wouldn't do it. How the fuck do you know that? You have no idea what you would do in that type of situation. And to your point, maybe that was too hard. This was too hard. I still think that they should have gone through with it and that they should not have not pursued this case based off of how hard it may be for people to put their personal bias to the side. But I think at the end of the day, people couldn't. And I say that because of how people are talking right now. I think people just cannot get past that Cassie was in this situation for over a decade.
I think this comes from, I think the conversation that we're having right now comes from the way that we look at things. I'm horrified and shocked and completely aware of the realities of sexual congress culturally.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still always surprised though. Do you know I could not imagine in any way, shape, or form having a sexual experience with somebody just to make my day easier? Like, I could not imagine doing that. Like, I exhibit, like, being a man or being told is like not doing anything you don't want to do. The moment you do something you don't want to do, then you sacrifice a certain degree of machismo, masculinity, or whatever. So if I don't want to do it, I just don't want to do it. And I'm not even talking about sex. I'm talking about going to a party. Like, if I get up, if I feel like I have to do something and I don't really want to do it, I feel like I lose a little piece of myself every time I do something like that. So I don't do things that I don't want to do, right? Even the way that we look at some of this stuff, in terms of when somebody is consenting to something, when someone is doing something that they want to do, how somebody can do something, it's never cut and dry. It's never, ever, ever cut and dry. It's never cut and dry. It's sometimes transactional. It's sometimes short term. And the ability to separate, what we're talking about right here is not actually even sex. We're talking about agency.
Mm-hmm.
And the ability to determine when somebody has agency, when someone shows agency, it's hard. And if the government was going to base their case around that, and I'm very upset with the government and how they put their case together. I'm very upset that they lost. And the reason why I'm so upset that they lost is because, and I would rather have them shoulder the blame than have the jury shoulder the blame, because the jury are just average, everyday people, supposedly, right? The reason why that bothers me so much is because this case wasn't just litigating or investigating Diddy as a person or as a criminal. It was asking questions about the behavior. it was asking questions about the
Correct.
hierarchy.
Correct.
It was asking questions about whether or not this stuff is, all of this is okay. Right? And we have a really, particularly in the Black community, we have a really interesting relationship. Let me not say the Black community. Let me just use me. We have a really interesting relationship to criminality because some of my favorite people in the world were criminals.
Criminality and public figures. I think that there's an interesting relationship. And sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. Keep going.
No, it's fine. No, it's good. We're having a conversation. It's like criminality and public figures. But see, the Diddy part of it is one thing. But the people that I know and the stories and the accounts that I've heard, they're not from famous people. And these niggas not famous.
Well, I really do think that part of the Diddy being who Diddy is as a public figure factored into what they thought was threat, coercion, or force in this case. I absolutely think that as a society, I put this on my social media and I said this at the top of this conversation, we really need to have a deeper conversation of understanding what is consent, what does it mean to consent and change your mind, and what does it mean to force? And that goes towards the agency. Force, a woman might feel a certain way. And this could be men too. Let me not just make this just about women, but a person can feel a certain way of that they have no choice because that person has control of them financially, of them professionally, of their reputation.
This is even uncomfortable for me right now. It like super duper uncomfortable. And the reason why is because I'm going to be honest with you. I am kind of getting a little tired or worn out with the fact that every single thing has to do with this unconscious bias and this weird unsaid, unspoken thing, because that to me it does two things. One, it takes people off the hook that are supposed to be doing their jobs, right? Like Kamala Harris is Black. True story. Hard to elect a Black woman. True story. They could have run that campaign in a way to where it wouldn't have been as big of a deal. Joe Biden could have got out. They could have had a primary. They could have done all of that stuff. So rather than actually deal with the process of what it takes to make the best actual candidate in that type of situation, we talk about the fact straight up they don't want to elect a Black woman. And maybe they don't. Maybe they don't want to elect a Black woman. I actually think that that's probably true, right? It's undoubtedly true. That's what I'm talking about. But at the same time, we did not put the Black woman in the best position to succeed. And the reason why we didn't do this is because of hubris, is because of the Joe Biden, is because of the Democratic Party. It's because of all of these things that could have been done differently so that we actually had a chance to win. And when I look at this case and I look at what this means, I'm looking at a group of smart people who should be able to anticipate and who should know, and who are, to your point, picking the jury that is going to make decisions based off of this testimony. And they still put people up on the jury that made decisions that apparently they couldn't anticipate, things that they couldn't see. And now we're all left with the fact that an abuser and a creep is going to be let into our midst. And it's like, there's no guardrails. There's nothing we could have done about it. As soon as it got back to the jury, it didn't matter what the jury, it didn't matter what was said, the jury was going to convict because they're rotten.
But how many times have you seen that happen? Jurors get cases wrong all the time, which is why I'm in a little bit more of defense of the prosecution, because you put it in the hands of the jury and you do the best that you can do, but you can't anticipate every single thing. You can't know if a jury told you the truth when you were questioning them prior to choosing them to sit in that box. You don't know if it triggered a memory from the past. You don't know. You're literally putting your case in the hands of 12 strangers who have
brought the case, though. There was going to be no case.
Of course,
they brought the case.
Have no. They have a level of responsibility. I just think I'm listening to you and I'm listening to the way you're talking about jurors. And I'm like, how often do jurors get this shit? They get stuff wrong, or I should say it like this. A jury is unpredictable. You can go back in time when these jurors acquitted these police officers when it was clear as day with what they did was so wrong. And the prosecution and the defense both chose who got to go in that box, and they have to settle on different individuals. But at the end of the day, the jury is unpredictable and they make a decision that shocks everybody. You just don't know. So to fully say, yes, the prosecution lost this case. Yes, maybe they reached when it came to the RICO. I'm on record saying I didn't think so, but I can concede and see that yes, maybe they did. You can't put it all and say they messed this up and they got it wrong, because juries are unpredictable. There's a whole movement where people hate the system when it comes to jurors, because you really don't know. You do the best that you can do and you leave it in the hands of 12 people with no legal experience.
What's the alternative system?
I mean, you could do it by judge. Not saying a judge isn't biased either, but the defense gets to choose trial by jury or judge. And why would Diddy's team have chosen trial by judge? They would have never done that.
The reactions to this were kind of all over the place. Not really. Aubrey O'Day said, "This makes me physically ill. I'm going to vomit. If he were to walk free, he's coming after everybody." Young Miami posted a video of Justin Bieber clapping his fingers. Lunel said, "Nobody, and I mean no one, cares what men do to women. It's sad as fuck to me." Tiny Harris says, "People want to charge you so bad for being freaky. It's nasty work." It's interesting.
Exactly.
Boosie and 50 Cent, Boosie obviously loves being on the wrong side of history. That's where he lives. Says, "It's a great day of hip hop. I'm tired of seeing us black moguls get took down like that." Judge Mathis said being denied bail isn't fair. And there were a lot of people that were saying that being denied bail in this case for Diddy isn't fair. What do you think?
I don't understand. I mean, he was found guilty on 2 charges. Okay. Letters were submitted by the victims, and both from the prosecution and the defense. Just because he was found not guilty on the most serious charges doesn't mean he gets a get out of jail free card. It is up to a judge to weigh all that's in front of him. And yeah, maybe he's not a flight risk in the same way, but to now give sympathy to Diddy and say he deserves to sleep at home with his family just because he was found not guilty on the most serious charges, it is already a win for the defense that he will not go to jail for life. But to now, as you said earlier, you're seeing people turn the tide when it comes to Diddy. We don't need to be granting him everything. The judge said he's denied it. I think that is fair. Let's not forget all the things. At the end of the day, he might have been found not guilty on those charges, but he is still an abuser. He is still violent. And his own defense team said that. So why the fuck does he get to get out now?
Yeah, judge
they
said
conceded to that.
The judge said, "Hey, you already told me this guy's violent. Like, why would I let him out?"
Yeah, like everybody agreed to that.
Yodit, we are having a conversation. Diddy, you said there were going to be 2 out of 5 that you thought they would get him on. Were these the 2 out of 5 that you thought?
Yes.
Okay. why didn't you think that the jury was going to come back with guilty counts on both sex trafficking counts and the RICO?
Okay, the RICO was the hardest charge for the prosecution to prove, only because they needed to establish that Diddy was the head of this criminal enterprise. And so I think that the jurors weren't convinced that this one man created or was the entire criminal organization. They alleged that there were other employees, like bodyguards, foot soldiers, high-ranking employees, but where were they? Why didn't they testify? Why weren't his co-conspirators charged? All we see is one man. We can't believe that all of his companies, corporations, was a criminal enterprise. We're committing crimes and covering them up. So I think the idea of Diddy running this criminal organization and being charged with RICO, which is notoriously known to go after criminal mafias, criminal organizations of that kind, that this was a person who he wasn't the greatest person. He was probably doing some real foul shit, but he was doing it on his own personal time. It had nothing to do with his corporation. So it was already a reach for a lot of legal experts to wrap their minds around the prosecution getting over that hurdle. I am very shocked that they didn't come back with a guilty verdict for sex trafficking as to Cassie. I thought Jane was not a good, Jane is the other ex who was testifying under the pseudonym of Jane. I don't think her testimony helped. Cassie, however, had that video where she is being abused physically and dragged by the hair to go to a freak off that she was trying to leave. How they didn't see that, especially when the prosecution made it very clear in their closing, all you have to find is one instance where Cassie was involved in these freak offs and she was forced. We're not asking you to believe that she was forced every single time. We're asking you to believe that she was forced at least one time. And if you can find that she was coerced one time, then that is a guilty for sex trafficking. And I thought that would have been, that would have hit home for them. And so I am very surprised about that. I'm not surprised about the racketeering, even though I believe the prosecution proved their case on that. But I'm a lawyer. These are individuals who are not. They come into the courtroom with different experiences. So they obviously view the evidence differently.
Yeah, we've really been having this conversation about how well the prosecution presented their case, or did the defense maybe just do a better job, and then versus juries and how they come in. I did not realize until the verdict came out that it was 8 men and 4 women.
Yeah, what does that mean to you? What does that mean to you instantly? Because I've heard chatter like, oh my God, 8 men, that means Diddy's walking. Not true. Not true.
Okay.
What do you mean?
Why? Because see, to me, I don't like that. I don't like that setup. So tell me why that's not true.
So there are studies, and from my own experiences of being a trial lawyer, women are the harshest towards women. They're the ones that are the most judgmental. So the fact that there was 8 men on this jury wasn't a guarantee that Diddy was going to walk. They're actually more sympathetic to women. I'm more concerned about their occupation. A lot of them had degrees. And where you have jurors who have multiple degrees, they're more inclined to poke holes in the prosecution's case. They're able to think critically in that way and be very, very picky about the evidence. So that is more of the concern. I'm not sure how that played a role at all, but I will say that just because there were more men on the jury didn't mean that was going to mean that Diddy was going to walk at all. That didn't even faze me whatsoever.
If you thought that the prosecution proved their case, why didn't you think that they would? Then why did you say 2 out of 5? Like, did you think the jury?
I said the transportation for to engage in prostitution, that was the least severe of the charges, and it was the charge that they proved over and over and over again. Let me tell you what it is again. It is transporting individuals across state lines to engage in commercial sex and commercial sex is sex for money. And they had already proven that. Cassie and Jane went to multiple states, cities, LA, New York, Miami, Turks and Caicos. You had entertainers come into the courtroom and testify. I had sex with Cassie. I had sex with Jane for money. They were paid between $1,500 and $6,000. They had proven that. That's easy.
Right.
That was the easy charge.
So what you said was you thought it was going to be two for sure.
For sure.
And then the other ones, you kind of expected that there would be one with Cassie, but not so much as Jane. Why I don't want to put you in the minds of the jurors.
Yeah.
Because what the back and forth me and Rachel have been having is the people I've been talking to have said that the prosecution's case kind of fell apart, that they did not present a great case, and which is the reason.
And I agreed with you. I agreed with you. I'm like, I think they did a fantastic job. Juries are unpredictable.
And it's so easy to say that once you actually know the verdict, right? To pick apart what they did, didn't do, should have done. I will say the only thing that didn't make sense to me was for them to put on their expert to explain why women stay, why they would actually.
Oh, they did do that.
They present, yes. They present.
Remember, I said I didn't know. Okay,
Rachel, they presented
the
her.
guy come on. Yeah,
they presented her after Cassie's testimony. Why not tie this thing up and present her at the very end? Because they were cross-examining Jane and asking her questions about why this and why that. And she's like, I'm still trying to understand why I stayed. I'm still going through therapy and trying to understand this, that, and the other. Well, an expert would have been nice after Jane's testimony, after everything was said and done, to then present her. I will say this. This is what I really am irritated by. And I heard Diddy's attorneys, one of them, Tenny Garagos, saying this, that the jury found that Diddy didn't commit the sex trafficking, that Diddy wasn't guilty of racketeering, that he didn't have an enterprise, that this never happened. And I hate that, because what an acquittal means, or what a not guilty means, that is just a legal determination. It is not indicative that someone is actually innocent, if that makes any sense. All they're saying is the prosecution failed to prove Diddy's guilt. We are instructed to follow the law and the facts. We may feel that he's guilty, but you just haven't proven that beyond a reasonable doubt. The doubt that the defense planted in the minds of these jurors, the prosecution couldn't get beyond. There was another alternative for them. There was another explanation, especially with regards to the sex trafficking. The question of consent. They were conflicted with their testimony, with their text messages. You have them enthusiastic, even planning some of these freak-offs. So they don't understand how they were coerced when you're also planning, when you're enthusiastic, and if you weren't comfortable with the freak-offs, did you let Diddy know? And I thought that there was text messages that indicated that. You saw that from both Jane and Cassie. I don't want to do this anymore. So I don't know. I don't know how they came to their verdict. And I honestly thought when they said that they had their minds made up, when they were unanimous on the 4 out of 5, and the one that they couldn't come to a verdict on was the racketeering, which was a no-brainer. I was like, oh my God, this isn't looking good, because
I thought they had them all.
And you know why? The transportation to engage in prostitution and the sex trafficking were also the underlying acts under the RICO. Remember, I told y'all in the other conversation we had before, they only needed to prove 2 predicate acts. 2. Mm-hmm. So if they found Diddy guilty of sex trafficking and the transportation to engage in prostitution, there's your 2. So I'm thinking, okay, the majority might be in favor of convicting on racketeering, but the minority is not. Well, clearly that's not the case. I'm dying to know what the divide is. But clearly, when they went back to deliberate, because the judge was like, y'all got to do some more deliberations, clearly the minority was for conviction. And the majority was to acquit, because they clearly folded. They came back with a verdict before 10 a.m. after just, 2 days? So it's very, very interesting. And I don't know if any of them are going to speak. I wouldn't. They're allowed to, but it would be very interesting to see what the divide is or what the divide was on these counts.
Yeah, Van and I were having a back and forth, literally talking for an hour, because the most troubling thing to me, and I brought up what one of Diddy's attorneys said in closing argument, is that Cassie was the real winner.
Was the winner, yep.
And it's this whole mindset and planting this seed of these women, when it comes to a public figure, they wanted this. They wanted the association. They wanted to be attached for it. And Van and I were kind of having this back and forth. And you talked a little bit about it of, should they maybe have even pursued this case? Because that type of thinking is so embedded in the minds of clearly men and women here.
Yeah.
When it comes to, and I put this up on social media, and you and I are kind of chatting a little bit about it. When it comes to consent and then changing your mind versus coercion or threat or force, when it comes to that, do you think that it was always impossible because of a bias or judgment that people have when it comes to, I guess, the acts that these women were doing?
No, not impossible. I will say this. The prosecution made it a point to make sure that the judge included in the instructions before the jury deliberated two things. One was that a person can still be a victim even though they won a monetary judgment. That those two things aren't mutually exclusive. They wanted to make that very clear, that just because Cassie got paid out doesn't mean that she wasn't a victim. And the other thing was, you mentioned it earlier, the consent. Just because someone gives consent one time doesn't mean that they can't withdraw that consent. They made those two things very, very clear in the instructions. So I had to just point that out. Do I think it's impossible or do I think it's harder? You already know that with sexual assaults, he say, she say, those are hard cases, period. You're going to get questions as to if a woman goes the civil route, she just wants money. If a woman goes the criminal route, well, why did you wait this long? Or why are you trying to take down a powerful man, black man? There's always a reason or a question about someone who believes they've been victimized and wants to speak truth. So I don't know how the prosecution felt. I think that with the Southern District of New York, they rarely ever lose trials. They rarely ever lose racketeering cases. I think that they truly believe that they had this. But even if they didn't, sometimes you go forward because you want to give these individuals, these alleged victims, an opportunity to have their day in court. It was important. I think even Cassie felt, I think through her attorney, he said that she was happy that people came forward. She was pretty much the reason why all of this even happened. And I think he addressed the winner statement that Diddy's attorney made. Listen, at the end of the day, his attorneys are going to do what they need to do, right? They've got to zealously defend their client. So they're going to create a narrative. And that narrative was, she's sitting on $30 million. I think she's won. When clearly Cassie testifying, the prosecution asked if she could give that money back and none of these freak-offs would have ever occurred, she would have taken that. She would have given every single dollar back. So for him to say that in closing, I don't even think that that was even the convincing aspect for the jurors. I just think that they felt that the prosecution failed to meet their burden. There was just an alternative explanation that was reasonable to them, that he was doing these things on his own personal time. There was no criminal organization. The sex trafficking, he was in consenting relationships. There's some stickiness there in terms of the consent. We saw evidence, text message evidence, where they actually wanted to do these things. So there were conflicting narratives, and they went with the one that they believed. And that was what the defense was offering up.
Why do you think they did that?
That's a hard question because I'm not in their minds. I think what jurors have to do is take their own experiences. I think they might question, and this is what women do when it comes to a female victim. Well, why did you stay? Because if I were in that situation,
If I was there.
I'm telling you, this is what they're asking themselves. And they're thinking, you could have left, but instead you stayed because you were getting perks. Now, I don't know what the men are thinking, but I can tell you that that's what some women do think. And so what they're asking, how they're judging this case is by how they would actually behave in that same scenario. And then they'll take the law and try to like tailor it to their own narrative, their own belief, and make it fit, if that makes any sense. So, I mean, that's all I can really...
Which they're not supposed to do.
Which they're not... well...
Yeah. What was the racial makeup of the jury? Do we know?
That I want to say someone actually... I don't remember where I read this. I don't know the racial makeup of the men, but I think the women were white.
Interesting.
Yeah. So,
white women for Diddy.
Now, listen, this bail. Let me tell you what is convincing me to this day that Diddy has no remorse. The bail issue. He was denied bail initially.
Did not get bail.
Yeah, he did not get bail. He didn't get bail because of the severity of the charges. He wasn't granted bail because he was actually engaging in criminal activity while under investigation. And he, while being detained, was reaching out to witnesses. So he had this disregard for the law. Then when he was acquitted of the severe charges, his attorneys go, okay, well now he's been acquitted of these severe charges. He should be able to go home while he awaits sentencing. And the judge goes, I don't see why my decision initially needs to change now. Because you all throughout this entire trial have conceded that your client is violent. That he is violent. And he has been shown to be in a complete and utter disregard of the law. And then he also got letters from Cassie. He got letters from some of the witnesses that testified saying, please keep him detained. And so he detained him. And the sketch artist who's been, releasing some of these photos, these sketches from court, showed what Diddy looked like when he was denied bail. And he had his eyes bugged out, his mouth wide open. He really believed he was going to walk out of that courtroom a free man, at least in the meantime. And that tells me that this man has never, ever really been held accountable. That's what that tells me, because he was shocked. And I don't know if it was his lawyers not managing his expectations. Maybe they told him that it was, a really good shot of him leaving. But this man is not remorseful in the least. And I think the judge knows it. And I don't think the judge can unhear what he heard for 7 weeks.
Yeah.
He just can't.
Yeah.
What? So,
go ahead.
Where do you think that we stand with sentencing?
Yeah. Now, each of those charges carries a maximum of 10 years. So there have been reports that say, he's looking at a potentially a 20-year sentence. And that's if they're stacked. And a judge usually doesn't stack cases, meaning one, he'll serve the 10 years, and then the 10 years, the other second 10-year sentence then kicks in. They usually run concurrently, so at the same time. So max 10 years. The prosecution told the judge in arguing to keep Diddy detained, that they were going to go for about 51 to 63 months. That's about 4 to 5 years. And the defense goes, well, we're going to go after a sentencing of 21 to 27. That's about 1.5 to 2.5 years, somewhere in there. And then he gets credit for the 10 months that he's already served. So what they're now looking at, when you have somebody who's convicted of a felony, they do a pre-sentencing report. And a pre-sentencing report is you're interviewing him, you're interviewing people that are involved in the case. You're even interviewing individuals who work in the detention center. You're trying to gather as much information as possible in terms of his propensity for violence, his background, his childhood, his upbringing, all that stuff. And then you have witness statements and victim statements and all those things put into this report for the judge to go over in order for him to better decide what the sentence should be. And so they have that scheduled, the sentencing in October, which I thought was like, that's a little too long. I mean, he's being detained until October for a sentencing. So they're trying to speed this up. I know that the defense is saying that they are willing to waive the pre-sentencing report in order to speed things up. And the prosecution is saying that they don't want to waive that. They think that the court needs more information in order to really give the most fair sentence. So they're going to have a hearing next week to decide when they're actually going to sentence Diddy, because both sides are in agreement that they do want to expedite the sentencing. So I'm thinking that the judge is going to go harsher than more lenient in terms of what both sides want. Is he going to look for, are we going to see double digits? No, we're not seeing 10 years. We're not even going to see anywhere close to 10 years. I think he's going to go somewhere in the middle. Is that a win for Diddy? Absolutely. This was probably, next to being acquitted on all charges, this was the next best thing. That's why he was on his hands and knees.
Yeah.
He expected to be convicted of the prostitution charge. The heavy hitter, the heaviest, most severe charges he was acquitted of. So that was the next best. Well, actually, I take that back. The best case scenario for Diddy is an acquittal across the board. The next best scenario was a mistrial. And then this outcome here. So yeah, he's going to be out. He still has life to live. I don't even know how old Diddy is. Is he like
55?
50 something.
So he served, 5 years? He's out 60.
He won't serve 5 years.
And he won't serve 5 years. I don't know how to do the mathematical calculation.
I don't think he's going to. I think Diddy is, I think no matter what, he's home at the end of the year.
Really?
So you're wait. So you're saying, because he's only served 10 months. So you're saying he's going to be sentenced to about what, a year and get credit for 10?
No.
Okay, so
I'm saying that Donald Trump is going to commute the sentence.
Oh, here we go with that.
I'm telling you guys right now, book it, mark it. Okay, so let me tell you something.
I'm not going to argue against
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. If Diddy would have been convicted on 2 sex trafficking cases with a RICO, the politics of it would have looked really bad, right? You're now letting a convicted sex trafficker out for Donald Trump. This is different. This is a guy who they said has engaged in some prostitution across state lines. Who in DC can't relate to that?
Okay.
So,
but so you don't think, so you think that he's strictly going off of what he was convicted of instead of what actually came out in court?
Absolutely. Because
he would.
Because
I can see that.
It's my belief that Diddy is way too shiny a political toy for Donald Trump to let stay in jail when he could activate Diddy and get him out of jail. There will be, I really do believe this.
So I could get on board with the idea that he would pardon Diddy for financial reasons, because I think pardons are for sale. I don't think that politically Diddy helps. But, aside from all of that, because I just don't think that it helps him. He's already in his second term.
Well, I do think it helps.
Okay. And see, I just think that he has the money to buy a pardon. And clearly Trump is in the business of making money.
I think, so to your point, I think the buying of the pardon is on the table.
Yeah.
But also, I do think it helps. The reason why I think it helps is the same reason you would pardon Kodak Black, or the same reason you would get involved in A$AP Rocky's situation.
But did he do that when he was campaigning? Because I can understand timing-wise. If he was campaigning and this was all happening, I totally would be on your side on this.
But
what does the black man vote mean to him right now?
Why does that even matter?
It's not the black man vote. Trump doesn't for votes, but Trump does it for cultural cachet and for likes.
Okay.
It's the black man adulation. It's the black man worship.
Perhaps.
It's the culturally codified. And by the way, not just black man, black people. Trump wants to, and also he wants his movement to continue. I think Trump, to be honest with you, would like for Donald Trump Jr. or for Barron Trump or for the rest of the Trump family brand to have a soft political bed to lay in with America. And I think they've already asked him about this, right?
Yeah.
They said they asked him, he said, look, if I thought that he was treated unfairly, yeah, I would. And
I just don't think he I can't believe I'm saying this. I think that there's I'm not even gonna say it. I feel like there is a line that I don't think Donald Trump is willing to.
Oh, no, you shouldn't have said it. You shouldn't have said it. You shouldn't have said it.
Not for a black man. I don't think he cares that way. I feel like he thinks that he's already gotten the adoration from black folks. I don't think he feels like he's got to do any more work when it comes to that. I think that when it comes to Diddy, I just don't think he's willing to go to bat for him on that. I just don't. Not with the facts that came out. I'd like to believe that. Now, I even felt bad saying it. I really did, because I feel like I'm going to eat my words later, but.
We'll bring you back to talk about it. If it happens, we'll bring you back to talk about it.
We'll bring you back to talk about this when Donald Trump pardons Diddy. The moment that Diddy got, that he didn't get, he just can't do it with the sex trafficking. But the moment those were out the window and the RICO was out the window, I'm like, Donald Trump is pardoning Diddy.
Even with the video of him beating Cassie, with that being out there.
Yep.
I mean, there's a tape of him too. Not the same level, but I'm just saying.
Well,
of admitting assaults, of admitting to assaults.
Right, but talking dirty, but then actually seeing somebody actually beating the living life out of a woman.
Yeah.
We're talking about two monsters here. Two monsters.
I know. But I think that he thinks he's the better of the monsters.
Yeah.
I really do.
We'll see. We'll see what happens with this.
I don't even want that coming out. I don't want to.
It's in there. It's in there.
What do you think about the people who think that it's unfair that Diddy isn't getting bail? Like Judge Mathis, your friend.
Do I think it is unfair that Diddy isn't getting bail? He's a convicted felon. What are we talking about here? He's been convicted of a felony. He's not now accused. He is a convict. He is guilty. And honestly, here's the thing. I'm not willing to, if I were the judge, and the judge, I think this is where he's coming from here. First of all, imagine the battery that's been put on Diddy's back. He's charged up at this point. He is literally beaten the Southern District of New York.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, because he's been saying he's going to walk out of that courthouse a free man. To allow that to even happen, this man already doesn't understand the rule of law. He already believes he's above the law. So then to allow him to be convicted and then to walk out and then to ask to be housed in his Miami mansion. Are you insane? I thought they would have at least said, you know what, we'll stay right around the corner from the courthouse. He wanted to stay in his Miami mansion and have limited travel to LA, New Jersey, New York. You got to be out of your mind.
That probably pissed the judge off. He said, you know what? That's probably why I got denied.
And here's the thing. I think there's specific deterrence, meaning I want to sentence this individual in order to make sure I'm deterring this specific person from committing this crime again. And then there's general deterrence. I am going to sentence this individual to make sure that the public, understands what the message is here. And I think he's sending a very loud and clear message to Diddy that just because you wiggled your way out of this doesn't mean that now I'm going to allow you to sit comfortably to await your sentencing, because guess what? There are other people that are involved in this case. I don't think the judge is willing to risk allowing this man to leave free when he's got so many loyal individuals, because he doesn't have to go and intimidate anybody personally. He can send his minions, though. He can send people. And he's got the judge that is, has way too many individuals who are concerned for their own safety. And I think he is making a decision for the public. And so I think he's making a smart decision. I didn't listen to the specifics of Judge Mathis's reasoning for allowing him to be granted bail. Is it because he was acquitted?
Well, because he was acquitted on the most dangerous
Serious charges.
crimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but do we not see that video?
Yeah.
I mean,
What are we talking about here?
we know what we're talking about.
No.
If you're Diddy's lawyers and he has all of these civil suits that are still outstanding.
Oh, yeah, he's not done. Yeah.
Do you make quick deals to settle as many civil suits as possible? I know that his money isn't endless. He has a shit ton of money, but I know it's not endless.
Mm-hmm.
Or do you fight these out and go through the whole deal? Do you just want to get rid of everything quickly since the biggest criminal hurdle is over? Or do you treat these basically the same way that you would have whether or not the criminal stuff had ever happened?
People have to understand that there's a different level of proof required in criminal court and civil. Just because Diddy was acquitted of these crimes in criminal court, where the prosecution had to prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the highest burden there is, it's not the same burden of proof in civil court. So there have been a number of cases. OJ is the biggest one, right? He was acquitted of murder, but then found civilly liable for those deaths of his wife and her lover. So was he his lover? Her lover? I'm not sure if I said that out of context.
Yeah, Ronald Goldman was her boyfriend.
Okay, her boyfriend.
Yeah.
So Diddy could be easily found guilty, liable, that is, in civil court. So is it best to settle? Probably, yeah. They want to quiet these accusations. Now, I don't think it gets worse than what we've heard coming out of, his trial in the Southern District of New York. But at the end of the day, he's got a slew of civil cases waiting for him. And you're right, his money isn't endless. So it's probably best to settle. I'm not sure if that's the route they're going to take, but it would be smart, because I can see him being held civilly liable for a number of these suits. Just because he was acquitted criminally does not mean he's not going to be having to pay a bunch of money to a lot. Don Richards is one of them. I don't even know. There's several people who Don Richards stands out because she's the one that actually testified.
There's a bunch of suits out there.
It's just a bunch of suits that's going to make, he's going to go broke. There are people that are talking about his sons possibly facing criminal charges as well. I don't know anything about that, but the way his trial, Diddy's trial, went down, I think that is a roadmap for his sons, if that were even to be a reality for them, if they were facing charges as well. I don't think anybody wants to go down that route, especially if they're being accused of the same things as their dad. And this is how it turned out, right? So, and it would look vindictive on the part of, the prosecution. It really would, that they're going after this family. So I don't know how true all of that is, but
is there any chance that Diddy sees prosecution from the state level or from a different district federally?
Yeah, I don't think so. Normally when you're facing federal charges and are exposed to state charges, they usually are happening
at the same time.
At the same time, and one is deciding to go before the other. Mm-hmm. And you're dealing with if he was ever exposed to state charges, they've probably ran out of their statute out. The statute of limitations have probably run. The reason why the prosecutors in federal court were able to get in all of these offenses and bad acts that happened years, decades ago, is because of RICO. So any state charges that he would be exposed to have timed out. I think that they would have been charged if they weren't. I think he's done in terms of criminal charges. You can't get any more severe than, well, I guess murder, but racketeering, sex trafficking, which carries a maximum of life in prison. So I think he's done with regards to that, but he's not done seeing the inside of a courtroom. So
you legal types, let me ask you guys something. Why is there a statute of limitation for 1 year on that domestic violence thing? We have it on camera. Shouldn't they change that? Shouldn't there be it's a relic of a time where we couldn't prove something like back in we have it on camera that he beat her up. It's a 1 year statute of limitations on that type of crime. Why would that exist? Like she got beat up and we can see that she got beat up, but there's nothing that anyone can do about it just because he was able to pay off the people at the hotel.
Well, there's a number of reasons why, even if you have the proof that someone was beat up. I had domestic violence cases all the time as a prosecutor, and sometimes a lot of times, the victims didn't want to proceed. I can't force someone to proceed on a case, even though I have the evidence I need. The most important evidence is the victim. And Cassie was engaged.
Did you see what just happened to your camera?
Mine?
Yes, it focused in on her.
When you said the victim, when do you have some kind of AI camera that's working?
Well, I have this iPad and it does like kind of zoom in while I'm moving, but what did it do?
I was dramatic.
Because of what you were talking about.
Okay, let me sit still.
Because it zoomed out. You went the victim, and it zoomed out and zoomed back in. What the fuck?
I think when I leaned in, it kind of like, okay. Well, thank you for letting me know because I don't want that to happen. So no. So let's just say that they wanted to pursue. So are you suggesting that because they have footage of her being assaulted, that they could bring a charge like today?
I'm saying
no,
that
he
the
just said
rule
it
should
shouldn't
be
exist.
Whenever, because like earlier when you said he's a convicted felon, I was on I'm cool with convicted felons and, worth rising. Shout out to Bianca Tylik. And, we got to look at the bail system and all of that stuff like that. But
right.
There's also the put him in jail part of my brain to where I'm like, if we got the evidence of you beating on a lady, we should be able to put you in jail whenever we get around to it.
But the reason why statute of limitations are in place is because evidence gets old, memories fade. It's not fair to bring somebody 10 years later. What you nodding your head for? That's it.
Because that's from the old school. That
what
like we got camera phones. Like that. What you're talking about, that's for the 1940s.
Okay,
when I don't remember what he did.
How do you?
But now we got the camera phone.
Okay,
we know you did it. We seen it. We got the phone.
But Van, what if you don't have a cooperating witness? So let's just say we've got that video released 2 years after it happened. Cassie is still with Diddy.
Yeah.
Are we gonna yank her into court and force her to testify because we have this video of him beating your ass? No, she's gotta want to do it. And she was with him for 10 more years or 5 more years after.
But I'm with Van. I think that there should be something carved out where it's like, fine, I get why statute of limitations exists. It's a part of fairness. But if there's video evidence, there should be something carved out like, well, if we have a video, we can still pursue you even though the statute of limitations is up. Is that what you're saying, Van?
I want him in the slammer.
Why do you think so many people, especially our people, don't want to see him in the slammer?
I don't know. I don't know.
It is.
I'm gonna get it. Say it. You say it this time.
What? Who? I said the Donald Trump thing. I'm not saying no more. You know what?
Okay, all right. So let me let's just say it. Let's speak plainly about it. Fuck it. Like, speak plainly about it. So this is the deal. If I don't really know the ins and outs of sex trafficking and RICO and all of that stuff. I don't know the ins and outs of it, right? Like, I could see how the jury made their decision because I think the prosecution wasn't up on their job like they should have been. Well, whatever, right? But when I see what happened to her, I want something to happen.
Yeah.
Like,
Of course.
it's when you know, knowing that we can see it and nothing can happen, and now nothing kind of will happen. It's just like a kick in my nuts. You know, we're living in this weird society where the bad guys just win. And I'm
Yeah.
fucking
That's
sorry,
always happened.
guys.
I'm
That's
sick of it.
always happened.
I'm fucking sorry. Look, I'll straight up right now. Everybody know it. I did a movie with Puff. Puff was like coming to like have me. He wanted me to work at his company, the whole nine. I knew Puff, the whole thing. Puff is a bad guy. He's one of the bad guys.
Yeah.
And that's just the bottom line. It don't matter. He's one of the bad guys. He's one of the bad guys. If we're talking about the people in society that we would have to deal with in order to like make a new society, that's what you're talking about. You're talking about him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's one of the bad guys. And that's it. He'll be, like, I'm telling you, he'll be home by Christmas.
Okay, so is it not enough? I mean, he's spent 10 months in jail. He's going to spend some more time in prison. I think it's going to be longer. I think it's going to be years. What about the fact that he's coming back to a career that's basically been destroyed?
That's not true.
It's not true?
Yeah, we're
Nope.
already seeing people turn. You're already seeing people say, because there's a thing where, you know how this is. I'm not going to compare it to OJ, but it's like, well, he was found not. It's the same thing you're saying. You said if they find you not guilty, it doesn't mean that you didn't do it. Right. It just means that they didn't prove their case.
Right.
I don't think that's how the public perceives it. He's not guilty. He got off. He didn't do it. And we live in a society.
Did it, but he wasn't found guilty. They know he killed his wife.
But we also live in a society where people forget. They forget. They move on to the next thing. And of course, they're not going to forget that Diddy went to court or trial for these things, but it will get softened over the years. People will water it down over time.
It will get softened over the years. Next summer, Diddy partying.
Less than that. But they will soften up on him.
I don't know what world are y'all living in.
And think it wasn't that. No, I'm agreeing with you. I agree with you. It's going to happen. It already is. Look,
you were talking about.
We did a list of celebrities that are already big up.
We were talking about
and that's
Donald Trump earlier,
you
right?
can't count Boosie badass. He's an idiot. Are we talking about him?
He's not the only.
Are we talking about Tiny? I don't give a damn. You know that, man.
But look.
You know I was in Baton Rouge, right?
Oh, did you?
Yes. I went to Southern.
What?
It just unlocked a whole new thing for him.
What?
Oh, we gotta talk offline.
Where was this? What the fuck is going on with that? How in the world did we never talk about that?
I mean, because you always come out the gate trying to clown. That's why.
You went to Southern Law?
Let him know.
Yeah, I went to Southern Law. Yeah, from 2006 to 2009. Came out in 2009. And then I stayed until 2011 because I clerked with a judge in Baton Rouge.
What judge?
Judge Trudy White.
Oh, okay, I don't know her. I thought it was going to be either Janice Clark or...
Oh, I know Janice Clark. She was right next to our office.
Yeah. Shout out to Janice Clark. My mom used to work for her back in the day, so...
So Janice and my judge were not friendly. They were like, yeah. So anyway,
she wasn't too friendly with my mom.
Oh, okay,
yeah, well,
I can see that though. I could know in Janice.
So, I guess.
Yeah, I was saying, let's not credit celebrities like Boosie, like Tiny. Who else came out the woodwork?
But listen to what I'm saying. Go back to the Donald Trump thing. Let's take the Tate brothers. Andrew Tate, his brother. Jimmy Tate, or whatever the fuck his name is.
I was like, is that his name?
No, Andrew Tate is the guy.
No, we got Andrew.
Oh,
I know.
I can't remember the brother's name. He a little nigga. These guys are wanted for sex trafficking all over the world. They got sex trafficking case Romania. They got sex trafficking case fucking the UK. Trump administration, different people, let them come in. These types of barriers don't exist anymore. It's gonna be people, Diddy gonna party next summer, and niggas gonna be at the party. I'm telling you. Diddy gonna party next summer. Now, you know where he's dead? He's dead corporately. Because here's the thing about Diddy. Diddy was getting corporate money. He had gone totally corporate, right? He wasn't really selling music anymore. Revolt was a network that had corporate backing and stuff like that. He had the liquor. The liquor was a corporate thing with him and Diageo and Ciroc. It was making about 90, 100 million a year. It was corporate. A lot of that money was corporate. He was a cultural translator from the boardrooms. It's like, how do we make the niggas make it hot? The reason why we went and got Diddy to be on Two Distant Strangers, the movie that we did, so I had a relationship with him, and also because he could make things culturally relevant. So if we're in an Oscar race and we need the movie to be black and we need black tastemakers to care, he's the guy that you will go get. That was a corporate thing. They understood that. That part is gone because he's too much of a liability for any people. That part is gone. However, right now he come out, YouTube channel, we doing the Diddy and Sons podcast. That's going up.
That's true.
And not only is it going up because people are gonna go on there. Some of these Christian people in these Christian churches, they're gonna bring him up there. He gonna sweat. They're gonna the whole nine, and it's gonna be. I'm telling you, it's actually in a weird way. This whole thing is gonna be his new wave.
I will say he is very good at marketing. He's a marketing genius. I know he could probably market the hell out of this whole thing. But I just feel like the people that actually have some sense and the people that he would want to engage with business-wise wouldn't want to touch him. Wouldn't want to be affiliated. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, you could have a podcast and have the likes of whoever you were mentioning. Boosie. You could have T.I. on there if you want to. Tiny, whatever. And you can remove those names too. But I don't think he is going to go near the likes of those at, say, the Rock Nation brunch, right? The Jay-Z.
That brunch is dead. He killed it.
Yeah. They have the Fanatics party now.
Okay, whatever they're calling it now. I just don't think that he is going to be at that caliber anymore. I don't think he is going to be able to surround himself with that anymore.
All right.
Who would risk that?
Do you think that Puff would be persona non grata at like the BET Awards?
Yes.
I don't think he would be.
I think he would be. No, that's corporate. There's no way that they are inviting him to the. There's no way that they're inviting him to the BET Awards. No way.
Y'all gonna be so disappointed.
Like what?
Okay.
What's
last thing.
How does he? Like in the back?
How does he
like
show
not
up?
A focus?
Yeah.
No one's got to know he's there, right?
How does if he comes? How does he show up? Is it similar to what like when Will Smith came with the mountain and brought out Kirk Franklin? Is that what you think is going to happen?
I'll say this in a very serious way.
He's not going to be at the BET
I'll say this
Awards.
in a very serious way. Okay. By the way, this is not a diss at the BET Awards. When I say the BET Awards, that's more of an amorphous cultural thing. I'll say this in a very difficult. So the conversation around this is going to be so taxing and so hurtful to so many people for a long time. Me and Rachel had a conversation here.
Yeah.
Sure, there'll be some people that are upset about some of the things that were said. But this is going to be a tough time for a lot of people. It's going to be a tough time for victims. And it's going to be a tough time for a lot of people who want to see us do better. Because there are so many different forces at play here. One is that now that he has been acquitted of the most serious charges, there are going to be people that are going to say that this was a witch hunt from the beginning and that this was all a part of the white power structure's want to take down a black mogul, right? There are other people that are going to say, you know what? He's been so for black people. He's been so anti-Trump, and this is another thing. There are also other people going to say, you know what? He reminds me of my uncle, my cousin, my brother, whoever. And everybody deserves a second chance, right? And what they're not going to understand is what they're actually talking about. I am from you know where I'm from, and you know how I grew up, and you know how the brothers there have to sometimes stumble before they get going. I get that. What we're talking about with Puff right now is 30 plus years of intimidation, violence, and abuse. Those type of guys don't get a shot at redemption to me. They get a shot at redemption between them and God. They get a shot at redemption between them and their maker. But you have lost your ability to function in culture. And by the way, I'm not talking about a one-off. I'm talking about blowing up this man's fucking car. I'm talking about beating up Drake. I'm talking about beating up Stout. I'm talking about 1999 and the thing. This guy is fucking dangerous. And to be honest with you, fuck me, because I was still like, oh my God, it's Puff. Oh my God, that same thing. It was the whole nine. It was the whole thing. It was a part of what we've kind of accepted from, to be honest with you, some of our cultural deities. We've accepted some of this. We've accepted that these guys are a little dangerous. We've accepted that these guys are a little bit off we like it a little bit. But there's a cost. And I believe that because the government basically said that he is not as dangerous as you thought that he was, that he goes back to the level of danger that we understood. That right away he goes back. He wouldn't be the first abuser we said yes to. He wouldn't be the first sexual abuser we said yes to. None of that matters. Puff will party again. And if I'm wrong on this one, I'm not wrong.
Listen, he was having freak-offs when he was under investigation, so the parties, I feel like, they'll continue. But you said he would show up at the BET Awards.
And
I just don't think he's going to be readily accepted in that way. I just don't. If he ever were to be accepted, it's going to be down the line. It's going to be years down the line. But he's got to do some serious work on himself and really show that he's trying to be redeemed, that he's trying to ask for folks to give him, because I'm all about giving someone a second chance. But that second chance comes with understanding and taking some accountability for your actions. And I just don't think he's there, even through this entire trial, and really facing the possibility of going away to prison for life and never seeing your kids. I still don't think that switch went off in his head, just based on his demeanor throughout the trial, his surprise that the judge wouldn't give him bail, just the entitlement. Yeah. So I just don't think that BET or the NAACP or any of these black, the functions, right, are going to invite him back, given the fact that we know that he was abusive towards black women.
Right.
Now, what everybody else is talking about online, that's not what I'm talking about. And you're right. Rachel, I think that they're corporate. They're not going to showcase, highlight Diddy. It's just not going to happen.
And this is the last thing I'll say on this. I would hope that we are better as a society, but also as a community, where we don't put him back on the pedestal that we wrongfully put him on before. But I don't feel confident in that when I see people dancing outside of a courtroom and wearing T-shirts and throwing baby oil on themselves. When I see people backtracking with public platforms who, based off of what the verdict was, I'm all of that. People are doing all of that. And, celebrities, whether you like them, a fan of them or not, are also supporting him. And so everything that you're saying is true. We've seen on display in a grand way the violence, the abuse, the disregard for women, the nastiness, all of it. And yet we're still seeing people turn a corner because of the verdict. And all I'll say is, I feel spent over 2 hours today on this podcast litigating about this case, whether it's the public court of public opinion or you giving your legal expertise. And I have to say, I am so sorry for all the victims in this case that have to be subjected to another disappointing verdict, who once again see a system fail them and not honor their stories, and who are forced to see another powerful man get away with the abuse of women. And I said this earlier, to be praised and celebrated for it. I have to acknowledge the victims because I know it is so hard for them to hear us talk about this, to see this all over the media, social media, and to see this monster get away with it.
He got away with it, but he got bruised up, and I'm happy for that, and I'm glad that all of it came out. I'm not happy about the verdict, and this is precisely why victims don't come forward. They're questioned about why they don't, and this is precisely the reason why, right? Because even when I do, and I have video footage of me being abused, you still don't believe me. So I appreciate you saying that though, Rachel, because I can only imagine what Cassie and Jane are feeling like, especially because Cassie has kids. That transcript and her testimony and articles written about this trial are going to live forever. It was embarrassing. It was humiliating for her to admit to a lot of the things that she had to endure. And to do that and still be spat on by our community. And I always want to respect the verdict of a jury. It's hard work. I think they did what they were supposed to do. I feel like I have to say I have to respect their verdict, but it was a kick in the face for Jane and for Cassie. Yeah. I don't know if this would have panned out the same way if the defendant was different. If the defendant, not different. I
said that earlier.
But didn't have the celebrity in the...
I completely agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, last thing I'll say, these Ricos taking some losses, man. Should they stop with the Rico shit?
Like, Brian Steele.
What you mean they took? What do you mean? They worked for R. Kelly. They worked for Ghislaine Maxwell.
R. Kelly was a Rico?
R. Kelly was a Rico.
I didn't know that. Well, it seemed like recently they tried to get Young Thug with the Rico.
Same attorney.
Yeah, he got brought on. Yeah, same attorney. Yeah, that was just a horrible. I think that's a horrible. That was a horrible example. That was just a horrible trial in general. The SD and the Southern District of New York has such a reputation for winning. They win cases. They don't go to trial unless they win. They have a very high conviction rate. So I don't think that they're losing in the racketeering department. I think that this was just a difficult case on its own. There's never a slam dunk of a case, no matter how much evidence you may think you have. And then they're also dealing with the celebrity of Puff. I think that was already a hurdle for them. I mean, shit, they had to boot a juror who wasn't even being honest about some of the statements he was making in his juror questionnaire. He might have been a fan. Just to find a jury that can be fair and impartial in judgment of someone like him in the state of New York, where he's from, where he just got the keys to the city. You know, it's just... So I think that they had an uphill battle from the very beginning with the charges and the celebrity of Diddy. And this is a kick in their face because they don't take a loss. No one does. They don't, no one likes to lose, but they lost. They really did lose. And so if I were them, I don't even know why they're talking about 5. I'd be shooting for the absolute max, knowing that he wouldn't get it. But that's what I'd be shooting for. Mm-hmm. And for them to be asking for 5, you already know the judge is probably going to come down on that to try to meet in the middle between what they want and what the defense wants. But I do think he's going to spend some years in jail, whether it's 2 or 3 or 4. I do not think he's going to be getting out. by the end of the year. I just don't see this judge doing that.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, robust conversation there. Puff, not out of the woods yet,
Nope.
according to Yodit Tewolde. Thank you. Where can they see you on, was it Hot Bench?
Hot bench.
Hot
Weekdays,
bench.
baby.
Hot bench.
Say hot bench is not a term that we just came up with because we think we're hot. I swear people say that. Hot bench is a legal term, okay? It is when a judge is shooting off a bunch of questions to lawyers, and that's what we do on the show. We've got 3 judges who fire a whole bunch of questions to the litigants.
Also happen to be hot.
And I just happen to be
That's
hot.
okay.
I can't help
That's
that.
okay.
I mean, yeah. But yeah, no, it's weekdays, Monday through Friday. Check your local listings. Hot Bench, new season's coming up in September. So we're shooting the season now.
New season of Hot Bench. Okay. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye. All right, guys, we are not going to waste any time. We have to talk about the fact that the House has passed the big, beautiful bill. It took some finagling by Trump. It didn't look like it had the strongest momentum in the House to pass, but it has, in fact, passed, and it is now a reality. We have Stephen Neukam joining us today. Wow. Blinged out. He is a congressional reporter at Axios. I'm loving the fact that you didn't come in here with a suit and the whole nine. You came here ready to do your thing. We have so many questions about this because this is a very consequential piece of legislation. Some people say that it is just another reconciliation bill that is, for whatever its merits would be, another piece of legislation pushed through by a president. Others say it fundamentally reshapes presidential power and the economic realities of America. Is this business as usual in Washington, or is this a huge, huge, huge sea change in how things are going to go for at least the next 4 to 10 years?
Well, I think as, with everything else in Washington, the truth is somewhere in the middle of those two sort of poles. I would say, look, the aspects of this bill that I think Americans will feel the most, first and foremost, are the tax cuts, right? I mean, the Trump tax cuts that they did years ago were about to expire. And, a reality for Democrats was that if they didn't do this bill, taxes were going to be raised for certain folks in the middle class. So folks won't see those tax increases that were expected to come in. But on the flip side of this bill is massive cuts to Medicaid, Medicare, SNAP, food assistance programs. So folks who rely on those programs to survive are really going to feel this bill. So I think in terms of how big of an impact does this have? I think Republicans hope it will have a positive impact on the economy and drive growth and things like that. But on the flip side, there's a lot of people who are going to lose insurance coverage, access to food programs, deep slashes to things like food stamps, and I think that's where this bill is going to be felt the most.
So how do they expect it to help the economy? Because the one thing that I'm struggling with is, okay, I'm hearing all the negative things that this bill will bring about, which obviously I believe. But, I was watching Mike Johnson, and he was saying, oh, we're going to pass this bill as soon as Hakeem Jeffries stops speaking. And we're going to show how this is going to impact the American people. And I thought, wow, that's an interesting choice of words, because everything that I'm hearing, yes, it is going to impact them, but it seems like it's going to do that in the most negative way. Mm-hmm. They believe it'll help the economy. How specifically are these tax breaks going to help the economy? And is there any benefit other than the wages, the no taxing on the tips, which AOC and other people have already pointed out that really doesn't help those people in that bracket anyway? Yeah. What are the benefits, if any, from this bill? And can you talk about how it's supposed to help the economy?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the Republican Party still largely believes in this idea of Reaganomics, right? That tax breaks for the folks at the top will trickle down and help folks at the bottom. And I think the ethos of that idea is that when you cut taxes on folks who own businesses, small businesses as well, they have more available resources to hire people, produce more goods, and that it's all around good for the economy. Of course, the data on that since the 80s at this point, when Reagan was in office, is spotty. Obviously, Democrats would argue to you that it doesn't work. So I think that that's, again, sort of the ethos of their argument, this idea of a free market sort of taking back and scaling back regulations, which was, they did as much as they could in this bill as well. Tax credits for industry, a lot of different ways that they're trying to supercharge certain industries, not just with this bill, but they've been, they did a big AI bill last year. So politically, they think that the payoff will be that this drives more growth. Of course, we won't know if that's the case, not even until next year, right? I mean, we know that there's lagging indicators for the economy, and sometimes it takes a really long time for decisions that are made in 2025 to, come into play, not until 2028, 2029.
Yeah, Reaganomics has been widely debunked. You give them a tax cut, they hoard the money. Question for you: the peril that Medicare and Medicaid will be in.
Yeah.
When will people start feeling that?
They'll start feeling it pretty immediately. I mean, these cuts and the effects of the bill are, if not this fiscal year, then next fiscal year. The reason that they had to make these cuts, of course, is because when you cut taxes, you have to some way balance that because of the lost tax revenue. So to be able to cut these taxes and extend and make the Trump tax cuts of 2017 permanent, they had to balance their books. And like you said, the program that took the biggest hit was Medicaid. I mean, hundreds of billions of dollars in cuts to Medicaid, and there's really no way for states at this point to buffer the costs of that as well, because states work differently than the federal government. I mean, the federal government can borrow money and spend their way with deficits, and state budgets and just don't work that way. So because of that dynamic, the effect is going to be pretty immediate.
Jeez. Stephen, we all knew we would get here, right? We knew with the pressure that Trump, Mike Johnson were putting on the Republicans in the House, that this is where we would end up. But there was a time, yesterday, where we thought maybe there's some holdout and they won't get the numbers that they need for this to go through. And you saw the Democrats bragging about this. Yeah. Do you know what was promised to some of these Republicans in the House to get them to change their vote from a no to a yes?
Well, I think just broadly before the specifics of this situation, I think you have to realize that the folks, the ace in the hole that Mike Johnson has is that he has the president in his back pocket to sort of come in and put pressure on these usually conservatives who in every other aspect, in some ways worship the president and view him as a sort of a political god. They looked like they were ready to vote against this bill. Everybody in DC knew, like you said, where we were going to get, that they were going to pass this bill. There was some reporting last night that Thomas Massie, who is one of the holdouts, who President Trump has been going at pretty intensely on social media for voting or saying he would vote no on this bill, asked the president last night, right before voting on a procedural motion and switching his vote from a no to a yes, asking the president to please stop attacking him, and he would be willing to support this. So I think it's, those are the dynamics. The president also gave conservatives agreement that he would work with them on phasing out green energy tax credits. So I think they got some answers that they wanted from the president, but also, like you said, we were always going to end up in this place, just because of the power that the president has over his party.
Uh, those congressmen that were able to negotiate with the president, they negotiated things that they wanted. Did they get anything for their constituents in terms of
Mm.
were they able to get some type of promise from the president that he would offset the immiseration that they would face through Medicaid, from Medicaid or Medicare? Was there anything else that they got for the people that they represent, or was it just for the people who donate money to their campaigns?
Not that we know of, and I would say, internally, the discussions within Republicans, they would say, at least and the argument that they make publicly is that the hundreds of billions of dollars that they slashed from Medicaid is just going after waste, fraud, and abuse, and they can't really publicly sort of raise those concerns all that much and also save face saying, oh, we were just going after waste, fraud, and abuse. So I think that it was more, political agreement to stop attacking some of these folks. And also, I think a big part is these green energy tax credits, which was such a big part of the Biden administration. I mean, the Inflation Reduction Act, some of the Build Back Better program, billions and trillions of dollars of federal spending went into these green energy programs, and Republicans, particularly conservatives, want them phased out very aggressively. So I think other than that, the reporting hasn't indicated that they secured anything else from the president.
Clean energy tax cuts were already in the big beautiful bill, were they not? Though
They were.
So they just wanted more on top of that. They wanted more aggressive. The president to be more aggressive in kind of getting that out of there. One follow up for me.
Yeah.
So explain no tax on tips to people, because this is something that is going to sunset pretty quickly. And there, like Rachel said before, there's a debate right now on how substantive this move actually is. Some people say, hey, it's going to be an extra X amount of money into your pocket. Others say this is kind of cosmetic. What's the actual answer?
Yeah, again, I think somewhere in the middle there, coming from like I served tables for 6-7 years before I got into journalism, went through school and doing what I do now. So I understand the no tax on tips conversation. I think that this was one, you have to remember a promise that the president made in the campaign, and it was probably part of the reason why he won the state of Nevada with Las Vegas there. So this is something that he felt like he needed to follow through on. Like you said, will sunset pretty quickly. But, presidents have these policies that are sort of pet policies of theirs. And they champion and run up the flagpole, but that they don't really do anything. I think, no tax on tips probably polls pretty well with a good amount of voters. But the reality is, the financial offset of the tax on tips, it just isn't that big of a reprieve for folks who are working in the service industry.
So we know that reporting has shown that this bill is not really popular with the American citizens. And although these Republicans in the House and in the Senate were cowards and couldn't stand up to Trump, they're eventually going to have to face their constituents who were not supporting this bill. What reporting are you seeing, or maybe you can, speak to this, of what's going to be the fallout for this bill? Because as you already, when you answered Van's question, you said they'll start feeling, with in regards to health insurance, they'll start feeling it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Van also pointed out, and I believe as well, that Reaganomics is not a thing. And so, and even let's just say if it was, it would take a while for the money to trickle down for them to even feel anything. So what can you speak to about how the American citizens are feeling now that this bill is actually going to be passed?
Yeah, well, you're right. The polling is not good for the bill. A lot of the public polling shows that it's deeply unpopular. I mean, just the idea. I think Americans, are weary of the message of tax cuts meaning wealth and health for everybody, right? I mean, because this is sort of a formula that's been followed since the 70s and 80s. Democrats who I talk to, and I primarily cover Senate Democrats, are in some ways rubbing their hands together and licking their lips politically because of how much of a disaster that they think this bill will be for Republicans at the ballot box in November 2026. Republican Senator Tom Tillis, who voted against this bill, and in the midst of everything else, also announced that he would not run for re-election next year. He was going to be one of the Republicans up in the hardest election in North Carolina in the Senate, went to the Senate floor this week and said that Republicans were making a political mistake that they will pay for in elections to come. So it's not just Democrats who feel that way. It is also some Republicans who feel that way. That's the reason some of them voted against it in the Senate. And, the dynamics are different in the House. But the challenge for Democrats is, what is your message? And how do you get that out to voters before November 2026? And there is, after the 2024 election, a lot of consternation within the Democratic Party about the sort of performance of its leaders, Hakeem Jeffries in the House, Chuck Schumer in the Senate. And it's up to them and their campaign teams and the folks that they have around them to try to claw back a majority, at least in the House. I mean, if they can't get a majority back in the House next year, then, the Democratic Party is going to have a really serious conversation about its leadership. The Senate is a far way away. It would take a minor miracle for them to win back a majority, but at least in the House, with the environment that we see right now, this bill, its unpopularity, Trump's unpopularity, the cards are stacked for them to perform well, and it's up to the leadership to make sure that happens.
Stephen, thank you for joining us on Higher Learning, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Thank
All
you.
the work you guys do over there at Axios. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
So just so people know, before we move on from the bill, this is how the money breaks down in the bill. About $4.5 trillion in tax cut extensions. That's an extension of the Trump era tax cuts from before. $150 billion in new defense spending. Okay. $129 billion in border spending. ICE has become the biggest, the most flush with cash of all of the entities of the federal government. I think I saw something like this. Donnie, look this up. $130 billion to ICE. Lots of money, new money flowing into ICE. Now, the savings over 10 years, savings meaning things that are cut, about $1 trillion out of Medicaid. That's $930 billion out of Medicaid. $488 billion out of clean energy. These are where they're going to save money in the bill. And about $300 billion in food benefits. So Medicaid, the environment, and starving people lost so that the richest people in the country could get a tax break. The military could get an extra $150 billion. And ICE could get an extra $130 billion. So Donald Trump's priorities, the Republican Party's priorities. We got to stop saying Donald Trump. This is the Republican Party. Their priorities are rich people, the military, and border security. That's what they care about. Deportations. Your health, the environment, and your hunger all got shorted. Those are the facts. Those are the facts. That's the money. That all got shorted. Those are the facts. All right. What you got?
Nothing. I honestly don't even know how to talk about this. I don't, because it is everything that you just laid out. This is what it is. this is what it isn't. I have yet to hear any Republicans speak to what the benefits, truly what the benefits are of this bill, other than the fact that they are just bending the knee and bowing down to whatever it is that Donald Trump wants. So it's hard for me to talk about when you constantly hear the Republicans talk about the deficit. I can't talk about it because everything they say means absolutely nothing. It isn't rooted in anything. They might say this one day, an hour later, they're going to change it in the name of Donald Trump. And that's really what it comes down to. Everything that they do is in the name of Donald Trump. And at this point, not that I was ever really had faith in political leaders, but it's really up to the American people to pay attention to what's going on. What I hope is this bill is going to pass. And as humans, it is so easy for us to forget what happens and move on to the next thing. And what this administration has been very successful in doing is pounding us with so many different things that we forget what's happening over here. And I think it is our duty as public figures or people with platforms and microphones to continue to talk about not just the fact that this bill is passed, but how many people are going to be impacted by it for the rest of their life. And I mean, as far as we know at this point, we don't know what's going to change, if it ever will change. And I think it's important that we continue to talk about it and not let this disappear and focus on the next thing that Donald Trump is going to do, because he's not done. My mom sent me something that's called a Project 2025 tracker. It is 1/3 of the way completed. 6 months in. They have completed 1/3 of the things that they said that they're going to do. We got to keep our eye on it, and we got to keep talking about it. And that's really all I can say.
I mean, in my opinion, there has to be branding around this. I know that sounds weird.
Did you say branding?
Branding, yeah. You have to brand the dysfunction that is going to come from this. And part of that branding is to make sure to connect it to the people that are responsible for it. Now, it would be awesome if there was an opposition that knew how to communicate and talk to the American people in ways that stuck with them. We actually have that in the Democratic Party. There are actually people who can do it, but they keep getting their asses kicked by the good old boys network of the party who doesn't want anybody else to come in and have a say. I saw that Hakeem Jeffries did a filibuster, stood up and did a filibuster, busted it up. And I'm sure that was a great workout for him, but I doubt that it has any significance to anyone at all. Now, people are going to be immiserated from this. People are going to be hurt. We can't just use this to poo-poo the other side. We have to be willing to help people. So I don't have the answers of how we're going to do that, but if in fact people have problems getting to the doctor or seeing doctors, we are going to, as a society, as a group of people who care, have to figure out a way for people to get the care that they need. And when we're talking about people who are hungry, as it relates to food benefits with SNAP and things like that, we're going to have to go harder on food banks. We're going to have to go harder on the mutual aid. We're going to have to go harder to make sure people, particularly people who didn't sign up for this, so that they have something to eat. Because this type of dysfunction shows itself in other places. The people that are hungry, a lot of them aren't just going to elect to starve. We talked about this a little bit before. They're going to find a way to go out
to survive.
Get what they need.
Yes.
And when you're talking about people and Medicaid, I think about people in my family recently who depend on Medicaid. Like unforeseen things. People that depend on Medicaid in Louisiana, a state that has a high percentage of people using Medicaid. These cuts are going to mean something. They're going to affect people. So we have to both brand this dysfunction for what it is and make sure we lay it at the feet of the people who caused it. At the same time, we're not going to be able to turn our back on the people who need help because of all of this stuff that's going on. What were you about to say? You look like you were about to say something.
Oh, no. When you were just talking about helping people get to hospitals, just the thought popped up that there are hospitals that are literally in rural areas or medical facilities already shutting down.
They're going to shut
because
down,
they know they're already doing it. Or
Right.
nursing homes for disabled and the elderly already shutting down. So I wasn't against what you were saying. I was just adding to it, thinking it's not even about like these people, even that they're going to get to these places. These places won't even be there for them to go to.
Yeah. So, we do what we can. At the same time, it seems like the other side is doing what they want. And that's a weird situation to be in. We got to get out of here. Before we do, I want to play something real quick. This is from one of my favorite podcasters. I have nothing to say about it because she says it all. This is Mona from the Don't Call Me White Girl podcast. She's talking about a story that she saw. And I could describe this, but I'm just going to jack the content because this is amazing. Donnie, play this.
I watched a little girl on TikTok, 19 or 20, tell a story about how her father is terminally ill. The doctor gave her father 6 months to live, and ICE came to get her father and locked his ass up. She said there's no way it's for a person to die. She needs help. She wants people to rally behind her to help get her father out. And she finishes off her speech with, "It really hurts worse knowing that I voted for Donald Trump."
At least she was honest.
Listen, hey, Esmeralda, I appreciate you being honest, babe. And I'm so sorry for your dad. But that bitch gonna die in there. He done. What you need to do is get you a plot and try to make out a deal to get that body. Because they might spark his ass up and chop him into a taco. You know they eating him now. Sucks to be you, Esmeralda. Fuck you, bitch. We told you not to do that. You know why? Because you bitches are selfish. You men and women are selfish, soulless motherfuckers. Because even if you did fall for the lie, I can understand that. You fall for the lie of this president say he's gonna get out the bad ones, right? But the fact that you secretly judge some of your brothers and sisters that come over that motherfucking same gate you came over, bitch, is the crazy part. You know your cousin Hector got a DUI, bitch. What about Hector? You wasn't worried about Hector, was you? Fuck you.
I don't want to laugh at that. I don't want
What?
to laugh.
That's funny. Fuck it, bro. That's funny, bro. That's
What about
funny.
Hector?
Huh?
What about Hector?
That's funny. That when I say stuff that's actually funny to me, that's funny. I watched that video probably 15, 20 times. That's funny. Breakbeat
funny.
Media. Don't Call Me White Girl is the podcast. At Don't Call Me White Girl. Please. You'll never. There's one clip on there where one of her friends, she had a jersey on. And she had a jersey on and she goes, "Do you know what my jersey is?" And it had a number on it. And one of her co-hosts went, "It's a lineman." And then she goes, "Wait, no, I want him off the show. He just called me a lineman. The jersey is Givenchy. He just called me a lineman. I want him to get off the show." It's hysterical. It's hysterical.
She's
Gotta
funny.
shout out
She's
another
funny.
podcaster. You got anything
Yes.
else to say before we go?
No.
Before we get out of here?
No.
Um.
I'm done with Diddy. I really hope we don't have to talk about him again until the sentencing.
Oh, no. No. Like I said, I just don't have any faith anymore. No more faith. I'm out of faith.
I get it. Sadly, I get it.
So, but I will say this, though.
Of course.
I see it. It's okay to admit that you were wrong. It's okay to admit that you were wrong about somebody. You looked up to someone. You thought they were a big deal, a big part of your culture. You had all of these aspirations that were similar to the person that you saw, like, succeed. Like, you wanted to be shining. You wanted to be on jets. You wanted to have cultural control. You wanted to have a big company. You wanted to have people that you employed. You wanted to have a bunch of stuff that America tells you that the winners have. And you didn't know sometimes what someone was doing. It's okay to say, "Hey, I was wrong about that guy." It's okay to say that. It only matters if you don't say that. That's the only time it matters. It only matters when you don't say that. It only matters when you accept certain things from certain people because of things that are completely arbitrary, like how much money someone has or who they were able to produce or how many records they've sold or something like that. You're making a choice about the type of person that you are when you're accepting certain things. And we all struggle with it. I struggle with it.
Sure.
Other people struggle with it.
I struggle with it, yeah.
How much? If you saw that video and you still fuck with that nigga, I can't fuck with you. And I'm not normally the type of person to say that. But come on, man. Come on. All right. Take your thinking caps off, but do not stop learning. I'm Van Lathan Jr.
I'm Rachel and Lindsay. Bye, guys.